Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. I'm Miss Lisa, and this is my YouTube channel for everything I want to talk about for science and math. And today we're talking about biology, DNA life's code. And if you're following along with this as a homeschool class, we're on chapter 28 of Glencoe Biology and Everyday Experience. This is sort of a series. This is the last chapter or the last topic in this series we have been doing of genetics. So we've talked about inheritance, we've talked about dominant and recessive characteristics, we've talked about mitosis and meiosis, and sex. We even talked about that, so go watch the video if you want to know about that. We didn't go into much detail as far as the how-to of that one though, but you can read more about it in your book. All right, DNA, life's code. So DNA is what makes up the chromosomes. We've talked about the chromosomes and how they're split and what happens with them in mitosis and meiosis. And what is this? What is a molecule that is what's called a double helix? It's like if you take a ladder and twisted it, then that would be the shape. And it was sort of new science that they've discovered more about DNA, and they're still discovering more. Like last year, even with COVID going on, I was reading about new discoveries with DNA. So what is DNA? Like I said, it's a molecule. It contains a code that tells the cells how to be, how to make proteins, how to control everything about it. And DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, but DNA for short, we can see why. And in it, it has got these parts to the ladder that are different, that are arranged differently, that makes a different code that gives different instructions. So just like in your book it talks about that Braille is a code of dots, that you can have a code of, other information. Computer code is made out of ones and zeros, but from that, your computer knows what to do. So it's just a type of code that tells your cells what to do, what to manufacture. And it's made of 4 different coded parts that are A, T, C, and G. And I don't think your book teaches you the whole name that those are associated with. You should go look it up and learn that. Sometimes your book oversimplifies, trying to be light on vocabulary. Sometimes they go too light. But anyway, and how it works is if on one side of the ladder is an A, it matches to T on the other side, and that makes the rung of the ladder. I told you it looked like a ladder that was twisted. And if G is on one side, C is on the other. Now, how you can remember that is AT is a word. So at goes together. And then how I remembered it when I learned it in high school with GC, those were my sister's initials, Gail Cash. So it was the word at and Gail Cash, and that's what goes together. You can think of something else. Gulf Coast, that would work too. At and Gulf Coast, because we live in Georgia near the Gulf Coast. But anyway, so that only matches that way. And so the order of these A's and T's and G's and C's and how they match up is what embeds the code in the DNA. So you will do a lab where you practice matching those up. When the DNA is read, how that works is that the chromosome is, remember I told you it looks like spaghetti, and what happens is it uncoils, and it's got the 2 sides of the ladder, they unzip, and then when it's unzipped, then another chemical comes up and reads the code. And this is where we have messenger RNA. And this is actually a very complicated process that I spent a lot of time in college studying. But we're just going to do a general overview of it. So what I want you to remember is that the DNA unzips like a zipper. And the other chemicals come up and read the code and then transfer the code to where it is used for what it's used. It's like going and looking at the blueprints and then going and building the thing. It's like that. So they proved in 1928 that it was the chromosomes, it was the DNA that controlled characteristics with an interesting little experiment with mice. Sadly, many of the mice die. They gave their life for science. So these are called nitrogen bases, the A, T, G, and C, and they are the ones that have the coded message. Now, just like there's DNA, there's also RNA. It's ribonucleic acid, and that is also has a code. But it's also like a molecular helper. It is what does the reading the messengers is this RNA, and carrying the messages to where they need to go. The DNA is in the nucleus of the cell, but the information needs to get out of that nucleus, and how it does it is through RNA. We are right now having COVID, which is why I started all these videos, and the new vaccines they've developed are RNA based. I don't understand them. Sounds weird to me, but that not what my expertise of science is in, but just interesting. I need to learn more about it. But they get the code, and then they go off and do with it what it needs, and then it re-zips back up again. So now how does DNA copy itself? Well, it does the same thing. It unzips, and then the chemicals come up and line up on the other side as it's unzipping, and then you have two new DNA molecules. I talked to them before about how you can have bad things in your DNA. You can have mutations, you can have genetic anomalies, and some of those can be really bad. It could cause bad life for you. For one, when we talked about before with sickle cell, you can have sickle cell trait or anemia, and that is one genetic mutation. Your book talks about that it's a part of the code where it should be AT and it's TA. So that can cause that problem. Now, we also talked a little bit about cloning, that clones would have exactly the same DNA, and it turns out identical twins are actually clones. They have the same genetic code. If they're identical twins, their genes are the same. So I always would laugh at like Jimmy Neutron. It was an old show about science where Jimmy makes all these clones, and they're kind of mind-numbed robots that do what he wants, but then they get worse and worse, like a copy machine or something. But that's not how it would be at all. Clones would just be twins, and one couldn't control the other one. Twins are completely different people, completely different spirits, completely different personalities. One doesn't control the other one. It's not a less person. So if we ever cloned people, they would be people. We'd just be making twins. So like, people would say, oh, if we could clone Elvis or, some great, Rembrandt or whatever. It wouldn't be that you get another Elvis or Rembrandt. You would have his twin brother, So now people are cloning their pets now because they love their pet so much and like they want another one. So a lot of people are having their pets cloned. If you're rich enough, you can get your pets cloned to get a new puppy who would be the twin brother of your pet, but it would probably have a lot of the same characteristics because you'd be able to get a sibling of identical twin of your dog or cat. And people do that. I was reading about this lady she's got 3 clones of her dog that died, so she's got 3 more identical, so now there's 4 of them. But and also, well, we won't talk about that right now. Let's go talk about something else about genetics, but we don't have to go in that deep. All right, so another thing that we do with genetics is breeding animals. So like I used to have a horse, and so I had a breed of horse called a Tennessee Walker Mare, and that means that they take horses that have the desirable characteristics and they let them mate, and then the baby horse, the foal, is going to have those same characteristics. So there's dog breeds. You can have a pit bull or a chihuahua. There are horse breeds. You can have a quarter horse or a Tennessee Walker. There's cattle breeds. So throughout the thousands and thousands of years of human history, we have been breeding animals. And I don't know exactly how far back breeding animals go, but we have historical evidence of breeding animals for thousands of years, trying to get animals with the desired characteristics that they wanted. Also, now we have splicing genes and gene therapy, so this is just new science but we have this thing called the CRISPR, and it can edit genes. And it used to be that you had to change genes before you made the embryo. So like they could go in and use different things to change the genes and try to get the organism they wanted. Now they can go into a living organism and change its genes. So they are started doing experiments where people go in and they've got some genetic disease that's going to cause them to die, and they go in and they've edited a whole person now. And so we don't really know the results yet. It's a very new experiment that's just been done, but they can go in and edit a whole person's genes. And that's what I was talking about in the other video, that was just such science fiction 15 years ago on Batman Beyond, where the snake people would breathe in and do gene editing and they would be part snake. And now we have this technology like at our fingertips where living organisms can have their genes edited, and it's especially would be valuable for people who have inherited genetic anomalies, especially if they're going to be fatal. So interesting times we live in, right? So the next chapter in the book is Evolution 29, and I am not going to make a video on it. I do speak on evolution, and I don't mind doing that, so if you want to hear me, but I don't want to put a video on YouTube where I can't have feedback, and evolution is just too much of a hot button issue. People are very emotional about this topic one way or the other, so I would prefer to speak face to face. If you want to hire me and pay me money and come speak to your group, I'm all ears. I'll come do it. But I'm not going to make a video on it. You can read it in your book. You can talk to your parents, talk to your pastor. You can contact different organizations will also come speak on evolution, but I'm not going to make a video on it. We're just going to skip it. It's not going to be part of this class. But if you want me to come speak face-to-face in front of a live group, I do public speaking, so I wouldn't mind doing that. So contact me and we can talk about it. But meanwhile, what we're going to do next in this class is we're going to do plants, because by now, according to my little schedule, this should be airing in April. April has flowers. We're ready to do plants. So like, share, subscribe, and come back, and we'll go back to chapter 19 and start the plants unit. All right?